You suffer not due to weakness or being mistaken, but because of your kindness. In a world driven by dominance, deceit, and self-interest, kindness often acts as a signal and open invitation to be exploited, ignored, or trampled. This truth was recognized centuries ago by Machiavelli. He observed noble people consumed by those they sought to protect. He saw rulers lose their thrones, not from defeat in battle, but from acts of mercy. If you choose to be gentle before you are respected, if you show kindness before establishing strength, pain is inevitable. And this pain won't win you admiration, only isolation. In Machiavelli's harsh reality, kindness was not a virtue, but a resorcion not spent for yourself, but used by others against you. He did not idolize the righteous. He examined those who endured. The pattern was evident. The more one strived for goodness, the more likely they were dismissed, ignored, or betrayed. Here's the truth that often goes unspoken. Virtue is not revered unless it's backed by power. Empathy is not valued unless it comes with strength. Kindness is only followed when it's rare and purposeful, used almost as a tool. If your kindness is limitless, it becomes worthless. In Machiavelli's eyes, anything without value could be cast aside. Since childhood, you've been told to be kind, to share, to forgive. Yet what was never mentioned is that every act of kindness sends a message. And in a predatory environment, those messages are seen as signals of vulnerability. You gave your time to those who didn't earn it. You extended trust to those who had already disregarded you. You minimized your own needs, softened your voice, dulled your light, all in the hope that the world would respond with care. It didn't. It met you with apathy. Because kindness without caution is surrender, and that's the reason for your suffering. Machiavelli cautioned us, the world rewards what is visible, not what is meant. You may possess the heart of a saint, but if you don't project strength, others won't treat you with honor. Goodness remains unseen unless it's armored by power. And here's the harsh reality. The more you try to prove your worth, the more people will challenge you. The more you pardon, the more you'll be deceived. The more you provide, the more they'll demand. This is not evil, it's human instinct. People will take advantage of anything accessible, unguarded, or soft. You hope for them to change, but they will not. They'll only alter their behavior when you show that your suffering will no longer serve their comfort. The reason you keep losing is because you're abiding by rules that the world no longer honors. You remain loyal to the disloyal. You grant worth to those who are ungrateful. You pursue harmony with those who only value power. This was Machiavelli's greatest lesson. In politics, in authority, in existence, kindness without power has no reward. Mercy without strength earns no respect. Gratitude never appears without a hint of fear. He wasn't lacking in empathy, he was realistic. To truly do good, you must first create a foundation where your actions have significance. That significance comes from boundaries, presence, and the ability to inspire caution. Look around you. Who bears the greatest burdens in families, workplaces, communities, and nations? It is seldom the ruthless, rarely the cold-hearted. It's always the ones who care deeply, yet ask little in return, who suffer most. The gentle souls are sacrificed first not because they're mistaken, but because they're convenient targets. They're easy to manipulate, easy to blame, and easy to abandon. And when they finally collapse, no one is there. Because kindness, once expected, becomes invisible. So, what should you do? Don't cease being kind, but stop showing kindness immediately, automatically, or indiscriminately. Kindness must now be earned. It must be deliberate. It must be deployed strategically, not routinely. This is the path of those who ascend the Machiavellian path. To command respect, you must first become difficult to approach. To be treasured, you must first become uncommon. You must be the person who gives only when it counts, only when it's merited, only when it makes people wonder, why was he kind to me, yet not to others? That's how kindness transforms into authority. There's a truth Machiavelli never softened. Your kindness depends entirely on what the world permits. In a society driven by power and perception, kindness that lacks strength becomes vulnerability. It makes you predictable. reliant on others' approval, and most dangerously, unaware that people never respect what they don't fear losing. Your worth declines with every unreturned favor, every yes you whisper while your spirit screams no, every time you remain silent just to avoid discomfort. What you see as generosity, they interpret as desperation. Machiavelli didn't advocate cruelty. He advocated timing. If you must act harshly, do it once firmly, decisively. In his view, a single calculated act of severity is more honorable than countless silent tolerances that create chaos. The compassionate person who always forgives, always sacrifices, eventually does more lasting damage to themselves and their loved ones than the person who firmly establishes boundaries with one act of severity. You avoid confrontation, but confrontation doesn't avoid you. It accumulates behind your silence, behind your smile, behind your forced "it's fine," until one day it bursts out. When that happens, those around you are baffled because you've trained them to assume your endless patience. People naturally test boundaries. They test your silence, your patience, your generosity, not to comprehend them, but to determine if consequences exist. If none do, testing becomes routine, and your pain becomes their expectation. You become the one they vent to but never truly hear, the one from whom they constantly take but never inquire about, the one whose generosity is forgotten. Worst of all, resentment grows within you. Yet Machiavelli understood resentment as simply unrealized power. Do you know what happens when kind people finally reach their limit? They either explode or vanish. They disappear without notice, burn bridges, and dismantle everything they've patiently built. Not because they've turned evil, but because they allowed everyone else's needs to overshadow their own for far too long. Truly kind individuals rarely stay kind forever. They simply break quietly as everyone wonders, what happened to them? They used to be so kind. But nobody ever asks what they endured to stop being kind. Machiavelli wouldn't fault you for turning cold. He'd fault you for failing to become strategic. Here's the hidden truth. The world does not dismiss kindness, dismisses defenseless kindness. The strongest form of kindness arises from someone who could easily be ruthless yet deliberately refrains. That's when people hesitate. That's when they pay attention. That's when they wonder, what benefit does he get from being kind to me? What price would I pay for betraying him? Kindness backed by strength is unsettling. It creates intrigue. It forces people to move cautiously because they can't decipher what's hidden behind your kindness. This is Machiavellian kindness. Calculated, deliberate, uncommon. There's a reason kings sit on elevated thrones distant, unapproachable, because easy access undermines authority, and kind people are usually the easiest to approach. You answer first, forgive first, assist first, show up first, and then wonder why no one respects your presence. It's not because they're unaware, it's because you've eliminated all obstacles. Machiavelli would advise, to be respected, you must first become inconvenient to disrespect. You must show people that access to you isn't an entitlement, it's an honor. And that honor comes at a price. Not all kindness is virtuous. Some kindness is just cowardice hidden behind politeness. You don't want to say no. You don't want to cause discomfort. You don't want to appear selfish. So instead, you silently harm yourself repeatedly. You burn yourself out for others. You maintain harmony at the expense of your own sanity. You pretend you're fine, even though internally you're drained, resentful, unseen. And here is Machiavelli's cold truth. Every act of kindness without awareness is self-betrayal. You give more than you need to people who never requested it, to people who come to expect it and then resent them for not acknowledging it. But they didn't compel you. You willingly offered. And in Machiavelli's reality, those who volunteer are exploited first. Machiavelli never suggested, don't be kind. He advised, control your kindness. Kindness should resemble currency spent strategically only when it brings return or strengthens your position. Powerful people give when it ensures loyalty, show mercy when it reinforces respect, support others when it amplifies their power. But when kindness becomes a habit, a personality trait, an impulse, it loses its value. That's the change you need. Kindness should never be automatic. It must become your tactic. Because kindness without proper timing is merely emotional vulnerability. Have you noticed this? You show kindness to someone, you make an extra effort, you think you've done something meaningful, unforgettable, but the very next day, they treat you exactly the same. Perhaps even colder, more entitled, expecting even more. Why? Because you violated the primary rule of power. That which is freely given is rarely truly respected. And if you keep offering kindness repeatedly, it doesn't just become undervalued, it gets exploited. People take advantage of you, not because they're malicious, but because you've conditioned them to do so. You've taught them your time carries no cost. You've demonstrated your energy has no limits. You've assured them their inconsistency will always be met by your reliability. Now they're addicted not to your generosity, but to your lack of boundaries. The world doesn't reward effort, it rewards scarcity. You can be compassionate, intelligent, generous, and insightful, but if you're always accessible, you're mere background noise. Now consider someone you deeply respect. Is it because they were nice, or because they were powerful and elusive? Machiavelli recognized that the rarer you become, the more valuable your presence. And the less frequent your kindness, the more influential it becomes. So, next time you feel guilty for not responding, for saying no, for prioritizing yourself, remember gold isn't valued because it's attractive, but because it's scarce. And those who earn respect through kindness, they ensure their kindness is scarce. There's a version of you that exists solely to be liked, that agrees out of fear, smiles through betrayal, keeps showing up, hoping that this time they'll recognize your value. That version must disappear. You weren't born to please, you were born to be free. Freedom doesn't come from being agreeable, it comes from commanding respect. Machiavelli would advise, stop aspiring to be remembered as good. Aspire to be remembered as undeniable. That means becoming someone who never explains boundaries, someone who doesn't waver when rejected, someone who doesn't compromise out of guilt. That marks the shift from victim to weapon. Here's the paradox. The instant you stop accommodating everyone, the moment you start refusing, the moment you become inaccessible, people begin to pay closer attention. They begin questioning their own assumptions. They chase after what they previously took for granted. Because respect isn't gained by being endlessly kind, it's earned by needing approval less. You teach others how to treat you, not through explanations, not through declarations, but through what you tolerate. And when you stop tolerating everything, your kindness becomes a display of power, not weakness. There's a harsh irony Machiavelli grasps better than most. The less you speak, the more attention you receive. In a world obsessed with noise, where people overshare to be noticed, where validation is begged for through social media, where vulnerability is mistaken for performative fragility, the one who remains quiet becomes magnetic. People assume, he knows something I don't. He doesn't crave attention, that's strength. He's not begging to be liked, he must already have value. This is why kind individuals often get overlooked. They share their truth too openly, they justify themselves, they reveal too much to prove they're harmless. But Machiavelli would counsel, never expose your entire soul. Once you do, you become predictable. And predictable people are always the first to be ignored or manipulated. Silence isn't emptiness. Silence is precision. It's how you create space for fear, build intrigue, and shift the balance of power. When you stop rushing to reply, people wait longer. They become uneasy. They replay their words because silence forces them to confront themselves. And in that gap, you grow larger. That's why silence is intimidating. It signals strength, not doubt. The loudest voice in the room is seldom the one truly in control. The person who waits to speak, observes everything, but reveals nothing, that's the strategist. That's the Machiavellian. There's another truth Machiavelli would quietly share. Even the sun becomes ordinary if it never sets. Your kindness isn't overlooked because it lacks quality. It's overlooked because it's too accessible. You show up when they don't show up for you. You message first. You initiate contact. You reach out repeatedly. And so they expect it. They undervalue it. They consume your effort without care, but disappear, even briefly, and everything changes. Suddenly, your name carries weight. Your silence sparks questions. Your absence speaks louder than words. This is the skill of tactical withdrawal, not vanishing to be missed, but stepping back to regain your power. Machiavelli didn't believe love kept rulers secure. He believed fear of loss was more dependable. People don't remain loyal because of affection. They stay loyal out of calculated fear, fear of losing access, protection, status, or power. This is where many kind people falter. They try to hold others close through warmth, forgiveness, and love. But the truth is, people don't change because you love them more. They change when they fear losing you. That's not cruelty, that's reality. Stop convincing people of your value. Start becoming someone whose absence hurts. Absence isn't passive. It's one of the most powerful tools in a strategist's kit. It creates room for reflection, forces a reassessment of your worth, and turns your presence into an event rather than an expectation. Think of every person who hurt you and grew accustomed to your forgiveness. Now imagine if you had gone silent, instead no explanation, no closure, just distance. Machiavelli would commend you, because in silence, you shift the burden of interpretation onto them. You become an enigma they can't solve, and humans are wired to chase what remains a mystery. Here's the paradox you must accept. Your kindness should be wrapped in barbed wire, beautiful to behold, painful to abuse. Because only then will people approach you with respect, not entitlement. Kindness without boundaries invites parasites. Kindness fortified by strength creates rulers. Machiavelli's greatest insight wasn't that cruelty succeeds, it was that kindness only succeeds when supported by the power to destroy. Let them see your generosity. Let them feel your warmth. But let them never forget that beneath it all is someone who can walk away and never return. You suffer because you're still trying to be who they once liked. The version of you who said yes to everything, who never demanded clarity, who kept giving even when ignored. But that version, he's gone. He had to be, because he was destroying you. Machiavelli would say, to ascend, a man must appear new to others, even if he once was noble. That's your next step. You don't explain the change, you live it. Let the world wonder, what happened to him? Why is he colder? Why doesn't he need me anymore? You don't answer. Instead, your new silence speaks louder than your former kindness ever could. Every relationship, every interaction, every conversation is a struggle over control. Whose needs will lead yours or theirs? Will you be reacting or setting the rhythm? Will you plead for attention or compel them to watch quietly? Kind people often lose not because they're wrong, but because they let others define their emotional frame. They react. They overjustify. They try to earn love instead of demanding respect. But Machiavelli's disciples don't react, they observe. They don't chase, they reposition. And once the frame is fully yours, you can be kind again, but now it's from power, not submission. Most don't realize they've been emotionally captive their whole lives, pleasing others to feel safe, sacrificing to be seen as good, staying silent to avoid criticism, forgiving to prevent abandonment. Machiavelli's world was harsh but truthful. He didn't waste time seeking approval. He spent time mastering how power functions, how people act when unobserved, and how kindness is often a tool, not a virtue. This is your transformation. You stop being reactive, you become intentional. You decide when to give. You decide when to detach. You decide when to vanish. Most importantly, you choose yourself every time. In the Machiavellian strategy, your reputation is one of your greatest weapons. Not your deeds, not your words, but your perceived essence. You were once the nice guy, the gentle, understanding one, the one they expected would always be there. But now you must become someone they speak of differently. Don't cross him. He doesn't give second chances. He cared once. Now he walks away like it's nothing. He helped me once and never again. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. When your name carries weight, you don't need to prove yourself. The room adjusts to your presence because your absence already speaks volumes. Every time you overlook disrespect, every time you respond kindly after being mistreated, Every time you show up despite being ignored, you teach them, this is what I accept, this is what I deserve, this is how I expect to be treated. Machiavelli would scoff at waiting for others to recognize your worth. He'd say, make disrespect costly, your time priceless, your energy guarded, your kindness reserved for the worthy. Once people know you have standards, they will either rise to meet them or flee from the pressure. Either way, you win. Let's be clear. Your kindness isn't the problem your lack of boundaries was. You weren't too kind. You were never taught how power truly operates. You grew up believing kindness always wins. But in Machiavelli's world, the one we still live in, kindness only triumphs when it's guarded by discipline, silence, rarity, and presence. So no, don't stop being kind. But stop being kind just to be liked. Stop being kind by habit. Stop being kind without purpose. The strongest kindness is not gentle. It's unyielding. It's kind and yet walks away. It's kind and yet enforces consequences. It's kind and still makes others question who they're dealing with. This is where you arrive the version of yourself that no longer gives out of guilt but chooses to give. The kind of person whose warmth carries weight because it's no longer automatic, no longer a crutch, no longer a way to survive. Your kindness now has an edge. It's intentional. It's rare. It makes people question their own worth when you extend it. This is how kindness turns into power. When it's reserved, calculated, when it makes others wonder, what did I do to earn this? And how do I make sure I never lose it? Machiavelli would say, use your kindness not as a message, but as a test. Watch how they respond to your boundaries. See if they appreciate what isn't freely given. See if they elevate or take. Because your kindness becomes a gate only those who earn it can experience it. And once it's lost, they never forget. You no longer punish people for failing to appreciate you. You simply withdraw quietly, strategically, and without looking back. That's not cruelty, that's selection. The highest level isn't to be feared. It's not even to be loved, it's to become an environment. When people are around you, they behave better. They think clearer. They hesitate before lying. They speak respectfully not because you demand it, but because your presence makes disrespect feel wrong. You don't assert dominance, you embody dominance. You don't raise your voice, you raise your standards. You don't chase loyalty, loyalty naturally gravitates toward you. There will be those who remember you as too kind, and later, they'll remember you as gone. They'll replay the times you gave, the silence that followed, the moment they realized you weren't coming back. And they'll change, but not for you, for the next person who reminds them of you. Machiavelli understood a deep truth about human nature. People only value what they can no longer have. So let your absence teach what words never could. This whole journey wasn't about killing your kindness. It was about killing your cowardice. That part of you that said yes out of fear, stayed silent to avoid rejection, gave without measuring the cost, forgave because it was easier than facing conflict. That man is gone. In his place stands someone who still loves but from strength, not weakness, who still gives but only when it strengthens his realm, who still shows mercy but never forgets the sword hidden beneath the cloak. You are not cruel. You are not cold. You are not heartless. You're simply finished with suffering for directing your kindness toward the wrong people. From now on, your kindness will become your tactic. Your silence will be your shield. Your presence will be your kingdom. Let them puzzle over how you became unreachable. Let them worry about losing your favor. Let them realize deep down that your kindness is both a gift and a warning.